Blue Beetle, the latest DCEU movie, or the last DCEU movie, or the first DCU movie? Where do I even start with this one? It's interesting in the way that it's so uninteresting. Let me explain. Let me Google search superhero movie script real quick and let's go over the plot. Blue Beetle focuses on the life of Jaime Reyes, the first Hispanic superhero on the big screen. Let me just say, how stupid is it that it's been this long? We've trudged through 32 Marvel movies and rode through the gates of hell with 13 DCEU movies. And just now, are we getting a main lead for a superhero movie from this entire region of the earth? We saw Howard the Duck before we got a single Hispanic lead. But that's what this movie gets right more than anything. I mean, look at me. I'm so white they could use me as reflection tape on the side of the road. But as someone who's been born and raised in Texas, I really think they nailed the Hispanic heritage of this movie. Blue Beetle is such a labor of love from people who wanted to see their culture represented on the big screen. And I think it really shows. And that heritage is where the movie starts. Jaime is returning home after graduating with a pre-law degree and realizes that his family has been hiding, one, that they are struggling financially and have to sell their family home, and two, that their father had a heart attack. Can you imagine that? In that situation, that heart attack better have taken my father out because I'd be finishing the job myself. This leads to Jaime ditching his dreams of being a lawyer and instead picking up some dead-end jobs to help his family pay the bills. Through this, he meets the love interest, Jenny Cord, who uses him to smuggle the Blue Beetle away from the evil Cord Industries. The classic pickup technique that's guaranteed to work 100% of the time, or your money back. Up to this point, I think the movie is fine. Even good. The family focus of it presents an interesting hook that you really don't see too often in superhero movies. I mean, how many superheroes do we know that the whole point of them is that they had a tragic death in the family or they're now orphans? In fact, I'd go as far as to say that Jaime's family is absolutely the rock of this movie. Not that kind of rock. Their scenes and Jaime's interactions with them are consistent highlights. They contain all the personality that this movie needs to stand out. Unfortunately, it's the rest of this movie that starts to slide back into territory we know, regurgitating the same MCU plot structure that we've seen for 15 years now. Jaime returns home with the Blue Beetle, and the thing completely, 100% epically pwns him 360 no-scope style. The Blue Beetle forcibly enters his body and integrates with him in a very uncomfortable and chaotic sequence. And from this moment on, beat for beat, this movie turns into the original Iron Man movie. You want a montage of the hero getting used to the new suit? Check. You want that montage to include flying to space and then falling until the last possible second? Check. You want an arrogant businessman to turn evil because they don't want to stop selling illegal weapons? Check. You want the antagonist to be a slightly larger video game character skin swap of the main hero? Check. It's such a shame that the well done and interesting setup with the family in the first act wasn't used to add more flair to this movie moving forward. Don't get me wrong, the family is very much still a part of this movie, and every time they're on screen, I'm very happy about it. But the setup of Jaime abandoning his aspirations to help his family were never brought up again. Jaime's family going broke because they wanted to support him through college was never revisited. It would have been so interesting to see any of these conflicts have some kind of payoff later down the road, but they were brought up once in the beginning and then subsequently forgotten about. The movie did try to set up one plot line around Jaime asking his dad what his purpose in life was. My only problem with this is Jaime isn't the freaking robot from Rick and Morty.
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
The conflict comes out of nowhere, has no place in the overall plot, and is used for one line in the beginning and one line at the end, and that's about it. I'd like to see something that tied a little more closely to the family's struggles, or was about Jaime's difficulty in providing for his family while still trying to forge his own path in life. It's a theme that properties like Spider-Man have really handled so well, and with how important Jaime's family is to him, seeing them support him through those kinds of feelings would have been really rewarding. Alas, this movie never reaches further than the struggle of the hero trying to beat down the big ugly bad guy, which, yeah, is going to be a shoo-in for any superhero movie. Speaking of which, let's talk about the bad guy. I wonder who's bad in this movie. It's surely not this completely normal looking guy, right? So yeah, there's this guy who I will call the Red Beetle, That's not his actual name, but that's essentially what he is. But the real bad guy of this movie is actually the CEO of Cord Industries, Victoria Cord. She's related to the love interest of the movie, Jenny Cord, in one way or another, and she wants to unlock the secrets of the Blue Beetle and how it integrates with humans to replicate that kind of technology for her exosuits that she wants to use for military purposes. Now, credit where credit is due, DC learned that your stakes of the movie don't have to be world-ending. The stakes of this movie are actually quite a bit lower than DC movies that have come before it, and instead relies more on the relationship between Jenny and Victoria Cord. This presents a little problem though, and that problem is that the characters have no chemistry whatsoever. I'm not even kidding. When I watched the movie, I didn't realize they were related. I thought they were like some kind of like friend thing with the dad. I had no idea. It wasn't until I wrote this script that I realized that they were related just because they have the same last name. This means that the bad guy is almost completely disconnected from the main characters. There are no personal stakes. There's actually no reason Blue Beetle is even handling this outside of the fact that Victoria keeps hunting him down for the Beetle. When Tony Stark stopped weapon production at his company, it had tension because it was his company, it was his best friend betraying him, and those weapons were being used by terrorists that had captured him in the past. Blue Beetle has none of this. It's a generic corporation with a loose connection through Jenny, but that relationship was never really set up, so the audience doesn't care. So in the end, the plot, like most things in this movie, is not bad or terrible, it's just generic, and a wasted opportunity given the talent behind this film. So the first standout of this film is the Blue Beetle himself, Xolo Maridueña. Of course, everyone, including myself, knows him from Cobra Kai. And actually a fun story for you, this movie started out as an HBO Max movie before moving to a theatrical release because of this massive success of Cobra Kai. And I think that transition really comes through in a lot of ways. However, despite my intense love for Cobra Kai, and I mean intense, the acting of that show has always been a little more Days of Our Lives than The Sopranos, and maybe the story too. So going into Blue Beetle, I was a little afraid of the casting decision, but I could not be happier to report that I was absolutely wrong about this. Xolo absolutely carries this film. He was a fantastic choice for this role. He brings the exact kind of fun and personality that you need in this movie. I really and truly hope that this movie propels his career into bigger and better things moving forward. Xolo is of course backed up by his family, and although none of them are bad, I don't think any of them really stand out all that much either. That is of course with the exception of the man, the myth, the legend, you know him as a talking ball of electricity, George Lopez. Now George Lopez really shows the effect of having a comic and a comedic role in a movie. He had me dying every single time he was on screen. Did 50% of his material land? No, not at all. But George Lopez sold his lines to the audience. I was expecting a quick payday for him, but he really put some passion behind his lines, and I really respect that. Did the antagonist of this movie deliver the same kind of passion? Let's watch a clip of Susan Sarandon playing Victoria Cord in this movie. Now, obviously I'm being mean. Susan Sarandon is a fantastic actress, we know this. But she did not put in the work for this role. I'm convinced she had 3 hours on her schedule, and after a 2.5 hour long coffee break, she decided to record some lines, and they just went with it. The Red Beetle doesn't fare much better, but to his credit, he is supposed to be a more stoic, kind of militaristic type role, so he didn't really have as much to go off of. Moving on to the visual effects, I'd like to show you guys a donut I made when I was learning a 3D animation software, Blender. I am now qualified to run the DC movie CG team. Maybe it's no surprise seeing as this movie started out as an HBO Max movie, but DC's track record of CG is not improving here. To the movie's credit, the first scene I saw of this, I straight up thought we were watching like a in-movie video game render of a cutscene, and by the end of the movie, I realized we were not watching a video game cutscene. But on the positive side, I do think the music of this movie was pretty good. At several points of this movie, I actually stopped and thought about the score and how it was delivering its job well. And maybe that's also a negative for the rest of the movie and why I wasn't thinking about that. But I did appreciate the score. I thought it brought the epic moments when it needed it, brought the emotion when it needed it, and was just in general fun to listen to. So in the end, Blue Beetle fails to move the needle for DC. Whether commercially or critically, this movie is a general flop. James Gunn and his team really have their work cut out for them. Superhero movies just don't have the appeal they used to, and I think it's clear that the renaissance they used to have has come and gone. And no movie is a better example of this than Blue Beetle. Nothing was particularly bad about this movie. In fact, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. But after over 40 superhero movies in 15 years, that's just not going to cut it anymore. You have to do something that's going to set yourself apart. And Blue Beetle just didn't do that. It's an enjoyable action flick, but one that's probably just best caught on streaming. Or not at all. I'm not your mom. So that's about all. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I've been having a lot of fun making these YouTube reviews for you guys. If you liked it, make sure you click the thumbs up button, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.